Okay. Hello, Terrencem here. And today I'm going to be going over Transform for the Defect. I've gone over it a little bit on my streams over at twitch.tv/TerrencemHS. And I've been doing tons of 50 or 100 game sample sizes of Defect. We've played like over 250, maybe even 270 now, because there was like a 20 thrown in there at the beginning. Just trying to figure out how well I can do on the defect and things like that, trying to min max as much as I can. But Transform's always been like a really, really weird part of the defect because there are so many cards that are just completely useless for you at the beginning of the run and also for a portion of the run after that. That's mostly in the powers, like things like heat sinks and storm are just almost completely useless at the beginning of the run and don't even necessarily become useful later. So there's things like that. As well as if you are spending something to get these transforms at the beginning of a run, like 99 gold or getting your curse, then you end up in a position where you have like two curses and maybe an okay card. Maybe you also break on a card award screen. Now you don't have like the gold resource to try and correct yourself, and you also don't have the strength to go through combats to correct yourself. If you can't get to hard pool combats without taking too much, you can't go to elite. Maybe break on potions too. It does sound like a lot going wrong, but I did estimate around 20%, if not slightly less, to be pretty bad, and then a pretty decent area. It's like 8 to 12 are like really, really, really bad, and then there's a bit of a like gray area, but we'll just go through it. I know when using Tier Maker before, a lot of people that this video might be even more helpful for can't really tell the cards just by like looking at their picture and things like that. So I'll try and go through as many of them as I can. Alright, starting off from the top, it's in alphabetical order. There's Aggregate. Aggregate is a 1 energy skill and it gains you energy for every 4 or 3 cards in your deck. Absolutely terrible, basically a curse at the beginning of your run. Can be a very strong card later. But for the most part will just be completely terrible, not something you really want to waste an upgrade on. It does change from 4 to 3 cards if you do upgrade it, but not really something you're actually able to upgrade right away. All for one, this might be a more hot take, but I think that quote unquote like naked all for ones that don't actively have synergies present when you're drafting them are actually really, really terrible. It's a 2 energy attack, deals 10 damage, and then you can get all your 0 cost cards back from your discard pile to your hand. So with all for one, it's very, very like upgrade dependent. There's beam cell, there's if you're starting with the all for one, you would take claw, yeah. There's FTL, there's steam barrier. The cases where it's fine and even very, very good definitely do come up. But I think it's something that you take based off of your based off of like your relics. If you have molten egg, off one's like insane. If you have Snecko, off one's insane. If you have kunai and don't hit focus, off one can be insane. If you just happen to naturally hit like FTL, go for the eyes, beam cell. If naturally hit like FTL, wanted to draft beam cell early because it's fine and you're like actually playing around these things and it's fine. But I think it's probably like more negative than good in a lot of cases, and something that you play when you're given the resources for, but can be good, but I think it's not good to take like naked at all. Amplify is bad for long periods of time and most runs, so yeah, it's a skill. It just doubles the next power you play. Don't really draft that much powers, and even if you do and you draw them, you're gonna play them. When you draw them, you're not gonna wait for that. It gets a lot better with things like Seek and Runic Pyramid and Creative AI, I guess. 11 block, very good. Auto shields. Ball Lightning, attack and channel a Lightning Orb, amazing. Barrage is actually a pretty bad card. It can be okay if you see any other orb cards, but it's dealing 4, 8, 12 damage unupgraded. 4 is worse than a strike. It also like affects how whether you can if you play like dual cast, if you're like forced to play dual cast, it gets even worse. So yeah, 4 is worse than a strike. At 8 damage with 2 orbs, it's still not a good card. Like 1 energy deal 8 is not good. And then 1 energy 12 is fine, but yeah. Barrage is very, very good at the beginning of a run. 0 energy, 3 damage plus vulnerable. Even without any upgrades or anything, it's like a 0 damage, like 6 to 9. Which is like, you compare it to like Slice a little bit from Silent, which is a fine card. You don't have the like bag of prep effect that Silent has of starting with an extra 2 cards from Ring of the Snake, but it's good. Bias Cognition, 1 energy power, 4 focus, and your focus goes down 1 every turn. Obviously, good focus. It's great early Blizzard. Deal 2 to 3 damage for every frost. 2 to 3 AoE damage for every frost orb channeled. You aren't gonna get enough. The last video I did upload before this is me getting Blizzard plus Bias Cog actually, and Blizzard being one of the main things. Like it's kind of funny because I start the video being like, oh look, like a broken card and then a curse, and by like the like end of the run, we don't have anything to mitigate. Bias Cog and Blizzard is our like main like kill thing for every fight, so I'm like never playing this or exhausting it with Recycle, and then ending every fight with that, so it's a little bit funny. Boot sequence, it's like an anchor. 0 energy, 10 block, and 8, so it starts in your hand every fight. Good. Buffer is stupid broken at the beginning of runs. It leads to 0 damage, a Lagavulin, and a non-fight, so it's not even bad into sentries, and that's when upgraded, of course. Bullseye, it's an attack, early, cool. Capacitor is actually a curse. It's like a slime, and it's a slime that like actively makes you weaker. For the most part, at the beginning of your run, being able to evoke orbs is usually a lot better than the passive effect that you're getting from the orbs at the beginning of a run. Like enemies don't have enough health the fight doesn't go long enough that you really need that extra bit. Chaos, channel 1 random orb is not a good card. It's like Zap's not really a good card. 1 energy channel Frost is not great, like compared to Cool Headed, which you don't even necessarily super want at the beginning of a run without focus. Channel Dark Orb is good, like, but it's also very, very conditional. Sometimes you can't evoke the Dark Orb at all. And then Channel Plasma is good. But yeah, it's very random. Half of it feels pretty bad. Half of it feels good. And then as soon as you get an upgrade, it's actually a good card, but Chaos Minus sucks, so I'm going to leave it there, I guess. Because it like demands a upgrade. And Charge Battery is obviously good. Just a block coming. Chill, channel a Frost for every Enemy for 0 energy, amazing. Claw, we'll just put it in fine, because, I mean, if you're transforming into it at the beginning of a run, makes your deck smaller, and it's okay. Draft some holograms or whatever, and it's like little, at least it's like a 0 cost thing compared to like the 2 cost thing of All for One. Obviously, All for One can be a lot better. I mean, this is more here, but whatever. Uh, Cold Snap is obviously good. Damage, Channel Frost Orb, great, amazing. Compile Driver, damage and draws for every orb type you have, amazing. Normally is drawing 2, like 1 lightning, 1 frost. 7 damage, draw 2 for 1 energy is pretty good. Even Consume is completely fine to have at the beginning of a run. You like get in play into like a Volan if you. I think it's like a decent pickup if you don't have any focus yet, because maybe you just see a run where you get like tons of orb slots but don't see your defragments or bias cogs, things like that. Cool Headed's obviously good. Channel Frost Orb and draw a card. Core Surge, deal some damage, gain an artifact. Good attack. Creative AI is like borderline down here. I'm actually just gonna put it down here. It does have some utility early into like Lagavulin, as well as like Hexagos maybe, or potentially Slime Boss, but not really. It's just not. Creative AI is just not actually a good card. It's a card that you like take to try and fill in some holes, but it's really, really, really something that you don't want to be relying on. It is so inconsistent. I've gone like 20 turn giant head fights where it never actually outscaled the giant head, and I was like struggling and then taking chip damage the entire time, and like by the time we finally kill it, it starts scaling. But like, yeah, and that's with it like within the first 3 turns. So there's that. There's Darkness, which is, I don't know, like a Dark Orb is definitely good early, but if you don't get other cards to help it, it can be difficult to evoke a Dark Orb. Like, if you don't get other orb cards, it's really hard to evoke it in like Gremlin Ob. You're not evoking it in hard pool fights. Sometimes you can't even evoke it in sentries to like super late. It's, you have to like draw dual cast your lightning orb, and then not play zap, and then draw dual cast again. So I mean, we'll leave it there for now. Defragment's good, focus good. AoE plus a dark orb is good. It like does other things, other positive things besides the dark orb, and having access to dark orb is nice. It's just this is like do nothing and dark orb, and then if you don't evoke the dark orb, you're very, very sad. Double energy, even if you're just going to 4 energy, is fine. You draw 5 cards. You have 3 energy. You play this, you get a 4 energy, and if all the rest of your cards cost energy, or one of them costs 2, you can spend all your energy. Completely fine at the beginning of the run. We're gonna put Echo Form in neutral plus because it is a very, very strong card later for sure, and will at least go away when you can't play it. You probably can't play it through most of like you can't really play it in hallway fights. You can play it in live one, of course, and it's like very impactful versus like this, which might not even actually be impactful at all. Yeah, it's just good, but it costs 3 energy and not great in hallway fights. Electrodynamics obviously good, best AoE in the class. Equilibrium, 13 block, 2 energy, retain your hand, good. Fission, good. Evoke or get rid of all your orbs and draw and gain energy for each. And if you upgrade it, you can evoke them. Force field's awful. You're not taking a ton of powers early, and it starts at 4. It's a while before it becomes decent. Like you have to do at least 2, and then it's like 2 energy block 12, which is like worse than this, and conditional, and doesn't have the extra benefit. Yeah. FTL obviously good. Damage plus it's free damage that replaces itself. There's no reason not to take it outside of Snecko and Choker. Or if you have like tons of draw and you're even when you do have tons of draw, it's good. But I mean, we're talking about in terms of Transform, in which case it's like ridiculously broken, like Transform from Neow. Fusion, we're gonna put in neutral plus. If you get some compile drivers, it's very very good. Like I never really took this much early game, but if I get like early compile driver starts, especially if I get a 2 compile driver start, then it's like very, very good. Another orb color plus energy. It does require an upgrade, which is why I'm not putting it up here, and it's conditional around the compiles. But yeah, it's okay. Genetic algorithm, obviously amazing. Glacier, obviously amazing. Block, let's channel some frost orbs. Go for the eyes. 0 energy, damage, and weak. Good. Heat sink's terrible. Power, draw a card for every power you play. Doesn't actively do anything. Card draw is not that valuable early because you don't have that much energy. It's just straight up a slime, which is not great to have at the beginning of your run. Hello World is actually good. It's good against Lagavulin. It's fine against like Hexa and Slime Boss. Even Guardian, it's not necessarily terrible. And it's like 1 energy to put in play, and like common cards are better than your base cards, your strikes and defends, which is most of your deck at the beginning of the run. It's just good. Yeah, what do we have next? Hologram. It's fine. You get cards back. It's good with 0 cost cards. If you upgrade Zap, it's okay. And we'll definitely do something later. Hyper Beam's good. You can just build around it and find... Very important for when you find reprogrammed and stuff, because it like will front load you through those fights, and then reprogram will be like your scaling for the slower fights. And it's a lot easier to find like holograms to support your program, whereas like as far as late game goes, if you find even if you find like a defragment, like you lose runs where you have like capacitor, defragment plus loop. Like that's not enough scaling for Act 4. Even if you have all 3 of those upgraded, it's just not actually enough. So it's a lot easier to find like reprogram plus some holograms to support it and some energy thing to be able to hologram your reprograms and get all that scaling in play, and just have some block cards to scale off the dexterity and survive, and then the strength will eventually do its thing. Leap's obviously just good. It's block common. Loop is weird. It's like a delayed zap, which is bad. It's not a conditional delayed zap like static discharge, which we'll see later. And it's very good later, especially by the time you get to the heart, dealing with beta death and like accelerating your dark orbs and things like that. I definitely like loop, and I definitely want one in all of my late games, but at the beginning it's delayed zap, which is like a strike over 3 turns, which is bad. So I don't know, it could be a neutral plus or neutral minus. Yeah. It definitely belongs on one of these. And you can set it up in Legible and it actively does something. It does something across the long boss fights. It's easy to put in place. We'll leave it in neutral plus. Machine learning, draw an extra card every turn. Again, in the same thing we just said about loop, where it's easy to put in play and it will do something in things like Lagavulin and Sentries and the long boss fights, but won't really do anything. And even like Gremlin up, yeah, it's fine. It's not like super. It's not super helpful. But it's okay. A Melter is just damage early and can deal with the Spirit Guardian like the card art says. It can deal with like Laos. It can deal damage through Guardian Shield. It can deal damage through Lagavulin Shield. It can deal damage through Jawworm Shield. It's fine. Meteor Strike is unplayable for a large portion of the run. You can go infinite with it later or Snecko, but yeah, sometimes you'll want to remove it before you even get to the boss screen and can even think about Snecko. And yeah, it's rough. Multicast. This is X cost card. Will evoke your orb for however much energy you put into it, like that many times. And it's really, really bad. Like, compare it to dual cast, where you evoke an orb twice for 1 energy. This evokes an orb once for 1 energy. It's not good compared to Recursion, which is not a good card. Recursion evokes your orb for 1 energy, and you keep your orb. It goes to the back. Whereas you don't keep your orb with multicast. It's not even something you really ever actually need at all if you're playing, like, stall strategies with dark orbs, then dual cast is usually just enough. It does accelerate how quickly it will kill for some runs, but it's really good if you have like a symbiotic virus, and it's definitely good. But other than that, it's very like borderline bad, but it's like semi-playable, but honestly, I'm not that happy to see a multicast in my run. Then we have Overclock, 0 energy, draw 2, get a burn. Not great. It's good later as you get to the point where you have like your powers and stuff that you have to get into play, and then after you get all your powers in play, you are stabilized and don't really care that much about your redraw. At the beginning of a run, it might even be neutral plus. It feels very neutral minus. It could be neutral plus. Like, it can be used and like outweigh its negative effects, and then will be like a good card later. Rainbow is good. I mean, at the beginning of a run, you don't have the ability to fill your orb slots. Rainbow does that. Cool. I personally am a reboot hater. It's probably just fine at the beginning of a run, but generally, as you get later into defect runs, you don't even really want to be playing reboot. Like, a lot of the cards that do end up in your discard pile are things that you don't care about as much. And you want to, like I said, with Overclock, you want to draw through your deck, get all your cards in play. You don't want the cards that, like the non-power things that went into your discard pile, to be back in your deck, delaying you getting that card into play more. But at the beginning of the run, it's fine. Synergies with like Streamline, Claw, whatever, I don't know. Rebound's not a super good card. Like, compare it to like Headbutt and Hologram, and it's like very, very obviously worse than both of those. But it's at least okay, and it's an attack early. You can't go too poorly. Can't go too bad with that, especially since you're mostly transforming strikes. I don't know if it's 2 strike or 1-1 when you're doing 2, but I don't know. I sometimes feel more comfortable just doing 1-1, just in case you get like a block card plus a brick, but maybe we can go over that more too here. Recursion, I'd put in neutral minus, neutral plus. It's like 1 energy for 8 random damage, which is not necessarily better than a strike, right? Like, if the damage is random, it's also a skill into things like Knob. It's nice to have when you have like Dark Orbs, if you see that, for sure. Not even for the fact of being able to like use a Dark Orb twice, like that, for like very, very long fights, and doesn't even necessarily happen often at all, but more to just like be able to evoke your Dark Orb at all. And then it's like, if it's on a Frost Orb, it's a defend, which is fine. But like the 8 random damage on the evoke's not good. Not amazing into hard pulls. You want to be killing a specific one. Not amazing into sentries. It's a skill into Knob. Yeah, but it's something. It's fine. Recycle. Probably actually neutral minus at the beginning of a run, but it's just such a powerful card to play around, especially knowing that you have it early and getting some draw, that I'm gonna put in a neutral plus. Like, you get if you get just a fusion at some point, and then whatever card draw you have, whether it be like Compile Driver or cool-headed pluses or skim, you can go infinite if you upgrade your fusion, upgrade your dual cast, and then upgrade the whatever draw cards if it's cool-headed. You don't have to upgrade it if it's compile. You might have to upgrade zap, but you can go infinite with those. So seeing recycle early isn't necessarily bad, but I've like seen recycle early, or like transformed into card draw early and then picked up a recycle, and then it was a curse in some runs as well. So it definitely can go either way, but it can be like so extremely powerful. I'm gonna leave it in neutral plus. Reinforced bodies, not terrible into hard pulls, not terrible into like Woolen, not even actually terrible into Knob, not terrible into Sentries, fine, good into Guardian, yeah. Reprogram, if you get out the side of a run, is not that bad, but a lot of the times you will be transforming strikes, right? You're not transforming your zaps and dual cats at the beginning of a run. So with that already, you are probably behind. I like early reprogram if you have nothing else going for you, but and which you won't at the beginning of a run with Neow. But we're talking about like transform 1, transform 2, which is most likely hitting strikes and defense, which is not not situations where you want reprogram. So we can leave it at that. Arbiter is good, 1 energy 14. It becomes a bad card because it's random damage, but for the beginning run, sure. Scrape is more of a neutral plus card. It really kind of depends on how many zero cost cards you've seen and how many upgrades you can get. Whether it will actually become a decent card, and similar to like Reboot, you can't actually just play it sometimes as you go later in a run. But it's like 1 energy 7 damage, so not like negative, it's fine. Right, yeah, it's fine. Seek, obviously good, just whatever your best card in your deck is. Amazing. Self-repair, heal for 7 at the end of every fight, amazing. Skim, draw 3. I mean, not super nuts at the beginning of a round, but like not bad. It is cursey. I mean, you could put it in neutral plus, but all these are like slight negatives. I mean, you don't actually want to be playing this in your Act 1 a lot of the time you won't be playing this in Act 1. Which could put it, like, down one, honestly, but I don't know. I'll leave it there for now. There's stack. We're gonna put in neutral plus. It's really not that bad. Like, it's a fine card. Like, okay, if you draw it on turn 1, it's worse than a defend, and if you draw it on 2, it's like slightly better than a defend. But then there's things like sentries, and they put like the 6 days in your discard pile. That could block for a bunch. In turn 2, it's blocking for like 11, maybe 13 for one. It's not necessarily awful into like a Voolen either. It's okay. Yeah, but it's like either worse than a defend or slightly better than a defend for the entirety of your Act 1, which is weird. Then there's Static Discharge. Static Discharge is a weird card. Like, there's definitely been points where I really, really, really like Static Discharge, but at the beginning of the run, it's already bad. It's like legitimately borderline go down here. Like, if you recall the discussion we had with Loop, where it's a delayed zap basically. Static Discharge is the same, where it's a conditional delayed zap. Like, this is just a delayed zap, this is a conditional delayed zap. So, like, a conditional deal 6 over 3 turns. That's, like, actually awful. And, like, the condition is that you're taking damage. And it's not even necessarily good as you go later into the run. It's like good at the heart, and like there's definitely been situations where it's been like amazing for me, and like done some very very powerful turns. Like there's been like a like Repto turn that I was like minus like 30 block from dying or something, and like with like lightning hits plus the frost evokes and things like that. And the frost evokes were counted in before that. I ended up not taking that much damage at all. But I mean, that's completely random and it doesn't happen very often. I really, really am tempted to put it in bad transform. Not even just neutral minus. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I really, really, really don't like the card. It's so slow and conditional. Steam Barrier, obviously good. 0 cost block. Storm, obviously bad. Requires other powers. Not really like good late. It's not good early. Storm's purpose is you get it off of creative AI when you have to draft creative AI later, and then it helps you set up all your relics however you want it when you're ready to kill. Streamline, I mean, it's not an amazing card, but if you're transforming into it, it's pretty good because your deck's already smaller and you have like a damage solution, you have to take less damage. So it's fine. Sunder's good. 24 damage. Amazing into hard pull fights, amazing into like multi-enemy fights. Sweeping Beam, it's just some AoE, draw a card, fine. Tempest is an X cost zap basically, channel lightning orb for every energy you spend on it. It's Zap's not actually good. I mean, Zap is slightly better than Strike. Sometimes it's not even actually always better than Strike until like hard pulls and Knob and things like that. I mean, this isn't that bad into Knob unless you spend all your energy dealing damage, if that's a problem, but whatever. Then there's Thunderstrike, which is god awful at the beginning of the run and not even necessarily good at the end of a run. It's damage on top of damage. That is very clunky. Cost 3. Yeah. Turbo's not like super amazing. It's definitely neutral plus or just fine. And I would lean towards fine because it's like very played throughout the course of a run. After like slightly, we've been slightly factoring the after part a little bit. And then lastly is the white noise. And I mean, I would never pick it because picking unupgraded white noise is borderline illegal. It's a very bad card. But if I transform into it, I'm not gonna be too sad. And it's like probably just like neutral to potentially very positive compared to your base cards. Yeah. I think I'm pretty happy with this as far as like defect cards go and transforming from now or like an early transform at the like 3 wall faces event thing where you remove transform or upgrade and things like that. So I mean I believe there's 71 cards. And how many do we have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because this is negative. This can be good, so I mean, we could push this up. It's like worth the risk. This isn't even necessarily always not worth the risk, comparatively. But like, I think everything in neutral plus is like fine enough that all of the positives worth um are worth like clicking on the transform button for. This will become fine enough. It definitely isn't for like all of Act 1, and then probably some Act 2, and is conditional as well there. It's definitely something you want at the course of a run, but it's straight up a curse, or a slime that makes you weaker when played. So yeah, it's a little bit awkward. So what do we have here with 11? 15%, sometimes 12. And then there's like some gray area here. So if you like tip the scales on like 3 cards here, it's like closer to 20%, but at least 15%. I mean, and there definitely are some in here that I'm not like super happy about, but yeah, it's probably closer to 15% than 20% as far as cards that are pretty bad to have from your transform, which is fine, right? If you're like 85% good on transforms, it just feels really, really bad if you're like paying gold or getting a curse. Because if you hit one of these cards down here, or even some of the like slightly questionable ones here, and you spent gold or took a curse with it, so you have to spend time removing the curse, or you don't have gold to correct yourself in a shop and make yourself like actually able to do elite and stuff, and you're having a hard time dealing with hard pulls and you brick on any card award or like potions, you're in a terrible, terrible spot. So I don't know. I do feel better about like Transform 1 though, and Transform 2 for max HP, but I don't know if I'd actually be okay with taking damage or spending gold or taking a curse all the time still after doing this. Those were like the parts I want to like do this to kind of know more about. I feel definitely slightly better about it than I did before, but it still feels slightly questionable because, like, I don't know, like, a lot of things here are, like, conditional. Like, this is, like, later. This is later, very conditional. This is requires an upgrade. This doesn't always do anything. This is slow. It's later. This is later, slow, but not actually that terrible. This is later. This is very, very borderline. This is very, very borderline, but can sometimes be good. Again, very conditional. A lot of the things in like the neutral gray area don't actually feel that good, but I don't know. Whatever. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this, how you feel about transforms in on the defect. Mostly came up just because it's been something I've been thinking about before, as well as came up in while watching Life Coach's stream where people were like, "Oh, transform's so good on the defect. Transform's amazing. Wow." And I was like, eh. So I figured let's actually do this, see how I actually feel about these cards. So let me know what you agree or don't disagree about as far as this. This tier maker was just like the easiest way to kind of quickly do this. I know it's not like super easy to see and or read. You can't read cards at all if you don't actually know what the cards do. That's unfortunate, but you can like open up the like compendium, the card library in the game and follow along while watching the video or something like that if you don't actually know the cards by picture yet. But yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about these cards in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And see you later.